Hello, Internet! Welcome back to Good Game Nation. I'm here with Sam and Zach. Say hello, boys.
We're back at it again.
Sup with it?
How you guys doing today?
Still thinking about 10:15.
Forever thinking about 10:15.
It's in my heart.
Today, today we're gonna go a little bit more in depth on some of the rule things that stood out to us from the basic rule release PDF. We have some insights that we want to talk about that we feel are a little bit more important to the other parts of it. Um, do you guys want to just jump in with the thing I want to talk about?
Yeah,
Sound
let's
good?
let's yeah, let's start with
Yeah,
you. Start with you.
absolutely.
Sounds good. Okay, so the thing that jumped out to me, and I think I mentioned in the original original rules video, was the your cards in your deck have to be the same card color as your leader. This, uh, I think, overall will end up being a hindrance to the game, and unless they do multicolor leaders, you're going to end up with a stale meta, most likely, or a potential stale meta, and possibly cards that get power crept, or cards that just become irrelevant because now the red Luffy leader isn't good and the blue Luffy leader is. So all of your Straw Hats that are red are no longer being played. On the flip side, they could just end up having an Usopp leader that you end up playing with those red cards, but I feel like this is a point of contention for deck building that will change how you see this game. What do you think?
So I would deck building is something that I would say I love the most about card games, and I would agree that I really bums me out when some cards just aren't playable. I've played a ton of card games, and that's always the case. So I don't know why I get mad about it every time, and I just try to make things work. The good thing about being dual colors, it made other leaders that weren't viable a little more viable. I would say you have a little more resources, you have more cards you can reach from. Um, the first thing I think about in Dragon Ball is they had a hit leader that was literally unplayable in set one. Like it was borderline unplayable, but there with the combination of I think it was blue, which blue is an amazing color. There was ways to make it somewhat viable. You won't have that option in One Piece, so I think it's interesting. I think we'll know a little more when cards get released, but it definitely is could be a little worrisome. So we'll see.
Yeah, what do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing right now. I think having a defined decks, right? I think it's better for a competitive scene right now. I think
So
it's
set one, it's okay, but later on, you want to see the ability to mix it up.
yeah, because eventually it'll just get to the point where red does what red does, purple does what purple does, so on and so forth. Mm.
Do you see them dropping the sixth color as a any deck can play this color,
Oh, sure, I
or
forgot
do you
about that.
see?
It would have to be like I mean, the color I guess doesn't really matter. They can choose whatever color they want, but I would assume it would be like black or white, something of those two colors, silver maybe, gold. I don't know.
Right.
Gold because they're pirates, probably. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I think it's good overall for the game right now.
Yeah, so the second color might be a universal color that's like colorless,
That's what I thought.
that can go anywhere. Um,
I would add though with this rule, it would make it easier for players to get in. I think deck building is quite intimidating sometimes, and with multicolored decks in basically every other card game I've played, um, it could get intimidating. But if you're stuck with one color, and if your set has 120 cards, and there's
yeah,
five colors, that splits up pretty nicely, and that's only a lot of cards to use from. So I think the accessibility and newer players getting in rate is higher with this rule. That's something to think about too.
I agree.
uh, the last side for me would be that it could make, like I said earlier, the meta stale. Your
Yeah.
competitive scene might get boring if you only have these four archetypes per thing. But I will resign my time to Sam so that he can jump into his key point that he wanted to jump into.
Yeah, definitely. I said it earlier. Deck building is probably my favorite thing about video games, card games, and the most interesting to me is how their mana resource works. Donna is definitely the most unique system in the game, and the first player moves one, the second player moves two, and it's two always after. So this means that turn one will be on odd numbers, and the second player will be on even numbers. What I mean by that is they're gonna flip one, then three, then five, then seven, and if cards require one to two, that's what you're gonna play that turn. So I think this increases the value of cards on odd numbers. If you build your deck on the odd system, you would be in a more beneficial area if you were built on the even. Because if you go first and you have more two drops than one drops, you have less cards to play that turn. So if you build your deck on that one to three to five, you even if you go second, you still have something to play. We don't know if you're going to have other things you could do with your Dons that would make this idea and concept more effective. But in this very brief first glance at it, this is what I would acknowledge as very important when you deck build, that your odds are going to be a little more stronger, yikes, more consistent than your evens. Because, again, if you're playing four drops and you're going first, you won't be able to play that into your third turn. So I find that a little detrimental. Obviously, if your effect is amazing, then that would obviously offset that concept. But ideally, one to three to five would be your better place in cards in your deck.
Because those are the resources that you're going to see more often.
It's more consistently. So if you, like I said, if let's picture it, 1-3-5 versus a 2-4-6 deck. I'm assuming we're following along still. If we are playing 1-3-5 and you're going second, you always have something to play on. But if you build a 2-4-6-8, more heavy kind of deck, you're going to be and you're going first. You have to wait an extra turn to be playing these cards. So on your first turn, you have one mana, and if you have more two drops than one drops, hypothetically, you wouldn't be able to play that turn. And then you would have to play your two drop on your second turn, which we have three mana. So then we're also not being turn efficient with our resources as well. So just small things like that, like off this first read, is something that I'm thinking about.
Right. So this is going to change how people build decks. This is going to influence how many of each card cost that you're going to play because like you're saying, you're going to want to like turn towards those cards that you're going to be able to play more consistently.
Yeah.
And if you miss this concept, you will most likely have more dead hands or stale fields or something like stalled fields or something like that. So it makes sense that that would be something that would help you be more consistent. What do you think, Zach?
Well, I agree. I think it's really important. I think on the flip side of it, I play devil's advocate. Combo centric decks that would something I can compare it to would be something along the lines of Shrivala OTK in Hearthstone. It was a deck that only played odd cards in the deck,
Yep.
but this would be even from where we're speaking. There were other decks in Hearthstone that did even. It's just the Shrivala was an actual it killed you in one turn. It was a combo deck. It's similar to that fashion. So you would have something like maybe you get the option to go second. Most people are going to want to go first, but if your deck allows you to play second and you have the option to go second if you win the dice roll, then that opens up a lot of different things because then you have options to play heavier cards, right? Like you can just do nothing for the first turn and all of your cards are 4 drops and higher, and then on your second turn you're popping off. So I think, like Sam said, it all just depends whether or not your deck, how strong the cards are for the cost.
Yep.
Because it's also your time.
Right.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to create variety in deck building and in play style, which is really cool. Let's jump into the 3 quick sections that Zach had in mind, which the first one was the refresh phase. He had some pretty interesting insights on gameplay revolving around the refresh phase. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I brought up the fact that there's no reason to have a refresh phase prior to your draw phase if there is no intention of interacting in your refresh phase. So what I mean by that is in Magic, there was a card that triggered during your untap. So at your refresh, a card that triggered said pay 4 mana to summon a zombie, and it was a 4/4 creature of whatever card you chose, right? So if you were tapped out at and he was a 5-drop, so like you would tap 5, summon your guy, and pass your turn or whatever, and then your opponent would pass their turn, and then they would tap their energy and be tapped out, right? So now your opponent's tapped out. It's going into your turn. Now you untap before you draw in Magic. So when you untap, now you can trigger your guy's effect at the start of your turn, and your opponent can't interact with you because they're tapped out. They have no dawn, so to speak, and you have access to your dawn to trigger your effects prior to moving into your draw step.
It's an interesting way that you might be able to exploit this phase depending on how they end up writing card effects. There's a gap in reaction that your opponent is not going to be able to react to. So dawn management is going to be really important to know that something could happen before you get a chance to react.
Exactly.
Got it. Any thoughts, Sam?
No, I light speed cards are something we're very familiar with. You talked about it when we were off screen. MST on your opponent's on the end
Right.
of their opponent's turn to stop trap cards from activating. So those little micro transactions are super important.
Yeah, that's what I was pulling from Yu-Gi-Oh! When we played. We would always in phase uh, run the destroy card so that they couldn't react with their trap cards that aren't valid yet. So it definitely has that same feel when Zach brings it up.
Yep, timing's
Uh,
important.
yeah. Uh, the next thing that Zach was talking about was the battle procedure and how it differs from Dragon Ball. Um, which could cause interesting reactions. What were your thoughts on this, Zach?
Yeah, so real quick, also, just to kind of give a layout, Dragon Ball, you get to, so you make an attack, and then your opponent has the chance to counter, and then you trigger all of your effects, your win attacking effects the moment you attack. Your opponent has the option to counter, which, they resolve their effect. And then after that, then your opponent has the option to block, right?
So these
So
are flipped.
yeah, it's flipped, and in Digimon, it's also similar. You get to attack, resolve your effects, and kill your opponent's stuff before they can block. So being able to block before you activate a counter is something that's important. I feel like we'll get to it at some point, but there's a one cost blocker, and I feel like it's going to be pretty important. Cards like that, because they'll keep you alive, because there's going to be a lot of, like you said, a lot of exploitations with things like this. A lot of you missed your counter window, you missed your block window, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So in Dragon Ball, being able to counter effects and then choose blockers gives you a different result as if you blocked first and then countered effects.
Yeah, because basically Dragon Ball, basically what counters do is the general census is it negates the attack. It stops the attack from happening. This is why I'm activating this counter, because I don't want to be attacked.
Does Digimon have those kind of cards?
Counter cards, no, but they have blockers.
Okay, I was gonna say this. It seems structured more to Digimon than Dragon Ball. Then I would say because the word counter here is not used as in counter attack. I think it's more used to buff. Because all the counters, at least the counters we've seen so far, like from the Brook and Sunny, was it? That it seems like their counter effects only buff their attack. So I think that's what the word means. And it seems it's structured a little more to Digimon. What do you think of that?
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that being the thing, actually, without having like the specific keywords of like counter attack.
Right.
I can see that being a thing as well. Either way, I think depending on how it unfolds, it could be really important.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing I wanted to touch on is, again, it's wording and figuring out how things are going to be handled.
Mm-hmm.
But the end phase, So this is all the effects that count as quote unquote during this turn, right? So like for the end of your turn, this effect is supposed to resolve. In Dragon Ball, until your opponent drew their card, your effect was in play. So, for example, I had cards that would say negate this effect until the end of the turn, or until the end of the turn you can restand. Um, Whatever the effect may be, it wouldn't be relevant at the end of my turn. So basically, when I say, okay, I am now in my end phase, I am choosing to end my turn. If my opponent's effects trigger during my end phase, all of whatever my turn effects, so if I have an effect that says stop your opponent from activating an effect for a turn, for this turn, as soon as I move into my end phase, my opponent would be allowed to activate his effect. Where in other games, he would not be allowed to activate his effect.
No,
And this is
it's
gonna
key.
go ahead.
No, it's super key because I think he's talking about Bloodlust, and even if like other games, Bloodlust was so important to Dragon Ball for such a long time, um, that I would just acknowledge that slight wording makes a huge difference in games like that. So, good or bad, that's nice that we have that little bit of information already.
Yeah, it's gonna shape how effects are and how interactions happen.
Interactions, yeah, I
So,
agree.
yeah, if like you guys are saying, if an effect ends when like I have cards that say during my turn, as soon as in phase, like I think that's the example that it's giving on screen is during my turn. So as soon as my in phase happens, those effects aren't affecting your opponent. It's just going to be an interesting thing. It possibly could be things to do with buffs. A lot of the stuff we're seeing right now is red buffs,
Yeah,
and it could be during my turn, you get plus 2k, which is only good for attacking and not for defending. So it's going to
right.
change how you set up your resources. And I don't think there's too much more that I can think of, except for it's interesting that we're getting that now, and I like that I think we try to aim more towards a competitive scene with Zach trying to go to nationals in every card game that's ever been created.
Yeah.
um, but just knowing having those insights of different card games, and this isn't always the case, like during my turn isn't always the case, so it's really cool to see those immediate insights on that. Do you guys have any final thoughts on our deep dive on rules?
Uh, I guess just real quick, touch. You had brought it up. I wanted to bring it up as like a better example, I guess, since for what I was talking about towards the end of the turn, since a lot, of, like you said, most of the stuff seems to be around buffing. There could be something that says like your opponent, like nuke all of your opponent's guys at the end of their turn, kind of like a doomsayer. Like nuke all of your opponent's guys at the end of the turn that are under X amount of power, and then during your turn you could have an effect that says
Buff
boost your
them.
guys plus 2k.
Yeah,
But then as soon as you end your turn, like you move into your end phase, your 5k guys that are now they were safe from the 3k press threshold, and now they're back to 3k and they're dead, and now you don't have a board no more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how effects end up interacting with this in phase change compared to what like we're used to with Dragon Ball and stuff like that. Um, Anything else, Sam?
no, I think the ship, the field spells. I think that's super interesting. I think Yu-Gi-Oh was a very unfortunate that never really got to abuse it at some points. I know some points it was strong, but it would never was really very relevant. Pokemon, it comes and goes. Uh, but I think One Piece, with how it's paced and how it looks right now, I think has the biggest chance to take advantage of that mechanic. So I think I would be really excited to see more ships, islands, whatever the case might be.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Um, Let us know what you thought about the video in the comments down below. By the time you guys see this video, so let us know what you thought about 1015. uh, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
Hey. All right.